Hello, and welcome everyone. My name is Haley Cusimano, and I am a GMAT instructor, tutor, and content creator, and I am so excited to be joined today by our panel to talk a little bit about reflecting on their MBA experiences, kind of from then to now, how their experiences in their respective programs have led them to where they are today. And so without further ado, I'd love to allow everyone to take a moment to introduce themselves. So Sherry, if you'd like to go ahead and get us started on a brief introduction to you.
Thanks so much, Haley, and thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you about my experience at NYU Stern. I graduated in 2018, which seems incredible. I wish I could go back and redo the whole thing again. I studied primarily management and finance while at NYU Stern, and currently am working as a business manager for the tech banking group at Citi in San Francisco.
Go ahead, Kinjal, if you'd like to jump in.
Hi, I guess thanks a lot for this opportunity. So currently I'm a senior product manager at Fidelity, and I'm building a platform for the mortgage business. And I graduated at Tepper from 2017 class. I had a fabulous experience at Tepper. And I'll be happy to share my experience over here. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ria.
Hey everyone, my name is Ria. I graduated from Yale in 2015, feeling a little old here after Sherry and Kinjal. I initially spent 2 years in mergers and acquisitions at PepsiCo right out of my MBA. Then I did another 2 years at a fintech startup, bumping around between product management, business development, and landed at Facebook a little over a year ago, where I am the program manager for the partnerships deal desk focused on SaaS businesses that Facebook sells.
Wonderful. Want to go ahead and jump in, Stephanie?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So I went to HEC Paris and I graduated in 2018. Pre-MBA, I worked in luxury and fashion, but then post-MBA, I sort of made a function and region switch, and I went from living in London to being here in New York, where I'm on the WPP Fellowship Rotation Program. And I'm in my 3rd year, currently working for a brand design agency called Design Bridge.
All right, and Carmen, if you'd like to round out the introductions.
Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for being here. I'm always more than happy to talk about tech and my experience there. I graduated in 2013, as you can see, so I am the most senior here. Before my MBA, I was a lawyer, and after my MBA, I switched to private equity real estate, and right now working on investment and development of logistics assets.
Oh no, I can't tell if I froze or if...
I think she froze.
I think she froze.
I think Haley froze.
Totally.
Technical difficulties on minute 1.
I know, this is the world we live in today.
I know that one of the first questions was one of the best things that we got out of our experiences at business school. Maybe we should start with that.
I love it. Sherry, you kick it off because you remembered it.
All right, and we're back. Goodness on that timing. All righty, so it looks like you guys have gotten things kickstarted and ready to roll without me. So hopefully it's just me that missed out on that last 30 seconds or so. So it looks like you guys are already kickstarted, and I will not interrupt from there. So by all means, we are talking about your best experiences as an MBA student. So whoever would like to go ahead and jump in and kickstart that, go for it.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick this off. So one of the best experiences I had at NYU Stern was starting Stern Chats, which is the school's podcast. It is a totally student-run production. I started it in my first year with now a really, really close friend, Frank Verricchio. And we started the podcast because, in the first few days, weeks of our MBA program, you hear about all these amazing students and peers walking the halls around you. But it sort of gets lost when you start recruiting because, the conversation quickly pivots only to, who are you talking to? What's your prep like? And you sort of lose those, conversations about what you did in the past and, what really makes you, what makes you super interesting. And so, I had no background in podcasting. I just like to talk and, make friends. And Frank has sort of some audio background. And so we just literally set up a couple microphones in the study room and started talking to people. And that sort of snowballed into us being able to use the professional studio at Stern. But it was something that was totally all-encompassing for 2 years. I met such amazing students, alumni, professors, administrators, and it was so enriching and such a great supplement to all of the incredible education and activities at the school.
That's awesome. I can go next. So one of the best experience which I had at Tepper is I actually co-founded a club, which is a very important part of actually students' experiences, clubs and organization. So we co-founded a club called Design and Business. And at that time when I was graduating, there's a lot of focus on design thinking, especially in the product management side of it, because we have to interact with the UI UX developer on a day-to-day basis to understand how can we better provide a design experience for our customers, actually at the same time try to reduce frictional experience for our customers. Actually CMU had a school called Design School, so we co-partnered with them and try to understand what are the different ways we can have a supplementary sessions as well as workshop to have different concepts actually ingrained into the product management as well as design thinking. So that is a great experience to start that club. Then it was actually hit it off pretty quickly. In fact, Facebook was also part of it. So to Ria, so Facebook actually did one kind of a session on that. So that was a great experience as well. So I was very proud of that moment.
Whoever would like to go ahead and jump in, go ahead.
Sure, I can jump in. So probably one of my best experiences was the international experience class that SOM made a requirement for all MBA students. They've obviously made it a little more flexible now so that people who have families or need to stay in the country for other reasons can have a virtual experience. And, we're living in COVID, so I guess that's a thing of the past. But it was a 2-week immersion into a country of your choice, led by a professor with about 20 of your classmates. And it was an in-depth look at the economy. So I chose South Africa, which was amazing because it was essentially a closed economy until, very recently. And we were able to, get in with the C-suite of many different types of industries in South Africa, understand, how they were trying to build from the ground up, understand their specific challenges. I'm actually originally from Trinidad, so felt that I was never lacking in international experience, but that trip in particular really opened my eyes to how to do international business. And I definitely credit it with helping me to be able to take a global view of whatever I do in any of my roles.
Wonderful. Carmen or Stephanie, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I without a doubt, first thing, my favorite experience of the MBA was at HEC Paris, we host the MBA tournament. And that is a kind of, let's say international, for the most part, it's European business schools who come over, but the last couple of years, we've been able to have more and more US schools participate. And it's a multi-day, sports, parties, networking, just super, super fun experience that we host on campus. And then we have a big party in Paris. And what was so amazing about the program is, to see kind of how different schools show up for different activities, how you can see the different school spirits, and it feels really a lot more like kind of undergraduate, where you'd have like, I don't know, color day or like sort of like Greek life. But it's fantastic because it's a super international experience, because especially with the European business schools, there's such a higher international population. And so it just means like we had an amazing diversity of experiences on campus. One of the signature sports is actually petanque, which gets a lot more competitive than you might have thought. And we also had a super, super competitive ping pong tournament, highly competitive chess tournament, and a super competitive poker tournament that actually, it was amazing. I remember this girl showed up on campus and she's from Argentina and she was like, I'm winning that tournament. And 2 days later, I think 100 players later, she had won. And so it's just a really fun sort of experience. It tops off sort of the end of our core learning phase. The week prior, you do this event at Saint-Cyr, which is a French military school in France. And so you go, you do sort of 2 days of like really intense exercises that are team building, and then you get to celebrate with the MBAC kind of at the end. And what's even better is that actually it's an entirely student organized event. So early on, students sort of take it on like a club, and they manage a massive budget. They have to do all the marketing, they have to do all the recruitment, and they have to manage all the logistics, which if you're trying to feed, you know, a couple of hundred MBAs and also make sure that the beer doesn't run out, it's quite the endeavor. But the lessons that you learn, I was not a part of it. I just worked the bar and did some sports. But it's fantastic. It's a really amazing event to meet lots of different people, to get involved and to really kind of have this super inter-academic international experience all at once.
And last but not least, for me, it's really, really hard to pick just one thing, because the whole experience, the 2 years, there's so many things going on. And the best thing about TAG is that the school is relatively small in terms of class size, but also students run everything in the school. So all kind of all events, all parties, everything is organized by students. So you get plenty of opportunities to do things and to practice by doing what you've learned in the class. So just a few examples, I organized 2 school-wide events. I participated in international consulting projects. I well, I lost count of the many experiences and all the things that I did at TAG. I ran 1 club, I organized parties. I actually had to take care of the logistics of buying enough beer for everyone, making sure we didn't run out of drinks. All those things. It is a very good way to go beyond the classroom and start applying all those managerial and leadership skills. Just start in a close environment in the school, doing things that seem like little, but you're applying those skills, and that's a training that's really hard to get otherwise.
Wonderful. I hadn't realized how common a theme this this party preparation was in our learning takeaways from MBA programs, but that's wonderful. So I actually had a couple of folks chime in live here, and we've also had a pre-submitted question around what your criteria for the selection process. What led you toward the program that you attended? You know, what elements came into play, and is there anything that you might have considered differently or put into play and weighed in more? So whoever would like to chime in there.
Well, I'm happy to jump in. For me, it was 3 things. I was looking at academics. I wanted a program where I got first-class academic, good learning experience, but I was also looking at the alumni network, the strength of the network, and finally community, because you might have noticed I have an accent. I am from Spain. Going to TAG was my first experience living abroad, and the MBA is an amazing opportunity. There's 2 amazing years, but you are going to be challenged every single day, and you will be pushed out of your comfort zone every single day. So I wanted to be surrounded by people who supported me and helping me go through that successfully. And for me, TAG offered everything. I remember from Spain, there was a point I had my list of schools I had already applied, and I found myself in that position thinking, if I am admitted in more than one, I will not know where to go. from here, I don't have enough information to decide. From here, all of them look the same. So I packed up and I organized a 1-week tour through the US that took me to California, North Carolina, Boston, and New Hampshire. And when I was there, it was very clear to me that tech had everything I was looking for.
I can go next. Or maybe somebody, okay, I can go next. So for career-wise, I come from a technical background. So my focus was always product management or technical product management. And so for me, my schools are pretty much lined up, which is like product management focus. So I applied for those schools. And from the experience side, I was looking for collaborative yet competitive schools. So that is one of the criteria. And Tepper had the smallest class size. We were like 210 people. So it's very collaborative, very competitive at the same time. And so I focused on product management and marketing and information systems. So that is what and obviously CMU had a very good computer science school. So that actually helped out to have some kind of some kind of case competitions where I can actually partner with the CMU, actually computer science schools, and learn even more from their professors. So that was a great experience as well.
I'm happy to, oh, go ahead, Stephanie.
No, go. I could go quickly. I think this is quite familiar. HEC, we talk about this a lot. I know that this is a common theme in all recruitment and poets and quants, but this idea of, do you want to make a functional jump? Do you want to make an industry jump? Do you want to make a regional jump? And that was super key for me. At the time I was living in London and I was considering whether to go to school in the US or to stay in Europe. I knew I wanted to move from operational to a more strategic position within my industry. And I was also, like, candidly, outside of that sort of like 3 criteria process, I was really conscious that coming from retail and wanting to go back into retail, I wanted to be really thoughtful about the ROI that I was going to get, knowing that I wasn't likely to be going into, finance or consulting, which paid just a lot differently. And I think for me, I definitely, when I was thinking about US schools, there's always the prestige factor. Like, we'd be lying if we weren't MBAs here, kind of going, what are we going to get at us in terms of like brand name credibility? And I do think, Carmen, to your point, the network is so super important. And so for me, I was sort of trying to keep it to sort of top schools in the US, where I really felt like if I was going to take on this sort of massive debt, that it would pay off for me with the brand name. But then conversely, with the schools in Europe, I knew it was sort of less expensive. And because I'd been working in London for the past sort of 6 to 7 years, that's where my network was. And that's where I sort of thought I'd have a better opportunity to leverage that, as opposed to maybe going to the US and having to start from scratch. Not that that's not possible with the schools, but just knowing sort of what my goals were, that was really important to me. And so I got listed at a couple of the schools in the US, but when I got into HEC, to me, those factors really played in. We have a really strong community between the undergraduate and the graduate programs at HEC, especially in France. When we think about the network, I remember I managed to get the GM of Nike Japan got on the phone with me for a 20-minute CV review for an internship application in Amsterdam. And to me, I was like, that ended up being a thing that happened while I was at the program. But I remember at the recruitment events, I was always really conscious of the alumni and the way that they made me feel, and whether I felt like that was a network I wanted to be a part of. So for me, just weighing up those options, I thought I was going to stay in retail and luxury, so it made sense to go to France. I probably would have gone to New York otherwise, but again, my network was close by. And I knew that I could have the visa opportunity to work in London or to work in France, and that gave me more flexibility. And then it was just sort of the network and then the people on top of it. And HEC has a fantastic sort of academic range, and that was important to me. And I think also, as a candidate coming from a quote unquote alternative background, I have a degree in jewelry design undergrad. I couldn't even get a transcript for my first year because they were basically like, it's pass fail. And also, you took like watercolor and goldsmithing. So how is that applicable for you? So the point of that is sort of like, I wanted to make sure that like whatever the academics were, it was something that I could actually keep up with. And the nice thing about HEC is that it is incredibly group oriented. And I knew that was part of the process and part of the curriculum from alumni I had spoken to, from the way sort of other people had talked about the coursework. And it turned out to be a really big part of the education process there. We would all kind of be in our cohorts, but then you're in your study teams, and those teams really take responsibility for each other. We had students doing sort of like remedial seminars in accounting or like in statistics. And so for me, knowing that that kind of support was readily available through the student network was really important. So those are kind of the key factors. I know that was a little bit wide ranging, but sort of thinking about that functional regional industry, and then also the way that my experience would translate into an academic experience was super important to me.
Yeah, so really quickly, probably echo a lot of the points here. One of the main things I was looking for was regional feeds. So all of the schools on their website show their stats. They show what industries people go into. They also show where those people are. It was really important for me to stay on the East Coast because that's the easiest way for me to get back to Trinidad, which is where my whole family is. So that was a major pull for a lot of East Coast schools, Columbia, Yale, Harvard, all of those. The other thing that I was looking at, similar to Carmen, is the strength of the community there. So Yale was one of the smaller schools. They've definitely, I think, doubled in size since I graduated. But I was really looking for somewhere where I could be sure of getting a lot of one-on-one attention, which is what I need. It sounds so spoiled, but I knew I wanted to switch out of oil and gas into a completely different industry. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to make some money to pay back the debt that I was about to incur on myself. But other than that, I wasn't so picky. And so I knew I'd need a lot of hand-holding in terms of redoing my resume, helping me source on-campus and off-campus recruiting events, and just like kind of like walking with me through every step of the way. And then the third thing that I was also interested in or keeping an eye on was the diversification of industries. So Yale is typically known as a nonprofit school. That's because they have like 4% of people who go to nonprofits. But that's still a big difference to a lot of different schools. And I wanted to make sure that, you know, I might have had some grand designs about what a great marketer I was. I wasn't. But like that I was kind of covering my bases in terms of the industries that were coming to campus and that would be easy to feed into.
I'll just jump in super quickly. Echo, really, you know, everyone has spoken so eloquently about, you know, how they made their choices. And, you know, I thought about a lot of that as well. I think for me as well, one of the deciding factors was I didn't want a repeat of my undergrad experience. So, you know, very differently from you, Carmen, I had sort of an undergrad experience that was really a closed campus. It was really small. I went to school in Washington, D.C. It felt very, you know, everything was really centered on campus. But the MBA is not that. It's, you know, you look for different things. And so when I was looking at schools, I wanted something that had a campus feel, but also was really sort of central to, you know, the work that I would be doing afterwards, much like Stephanie was saying. So Stern really, really spoke to me. I'm also a career switcher. I was in hospitality prior to my MBA, so pretty different. I was running some restaurants in Washington, D.C. and wanted to sort of, you know, take a complete left turn and do something totally different. I wasn't quite sure, but, you know, New York is nothing if not the city of possibilities. So that was really what I was looking for, and a huge divergence from that undergrad experience.
Wonderful. So it sounds like we have quite a few folks on the panel who had some pretty serious transitions from what they're doing beforehand, which actually transitions us nicely into our next question, and that is, as you guys were entering your program, what were some of the biggest, we'll say, issues or opportunities, things that you hadn't quite anticipated when you began your MBA programs that perhaps could pose some advice or some, here's what to expect for future MBA students?
I think for me, one of the challenges that I faced when I started my networking was not really knowing what questions to ask. You know, I knew I sort of had a bent towards HR and operations coming out of my experience as a restaurant manager, as a GM, but I wasn't quite sure what that translated to. So as I sat down for a lot of networking conversations, I was really conscientious to, you know, be able to speak about my story, thoughtfully and with sort of a through line, but also then to sort of listen to the feedback. And as I was doing my networking, people kept on saying to me, it sounds like what you're really interested in is HR. HR perhaps at a large institutional firm. And that was really a revelation to me. I didn't know much about HR. My former company didn't have an HR department, but it turned out that the work that I was doing was really HR focused and was really people focused. I've since transitioned out of HR, which is another story. But I think, one of the big issues when you are transitioning is to know your story really well. Don't overcraft it. Just really understand, where you're coming from, but also make sure to listen to what people are telling you. It's not just about your exposition. It's also about hearing the feedback and really thinking through that next step and what they're actually, the advice that they're actually giving you.
I think if I was going to follow that up, very candidly, my biggest transitional issue was remembering how to be in a classroom environment. I don't know if anyone else on the call had this experience, but I was like, do I take notes with my hand on paper? Do I do it in this app? Do I do it in this app? Should I be listening more? And sort of just switching my brain back to sitting in a classroom and learning. That was actually a really big transition for me. And again, that's why I was so grateful for the groups and the sort of group approach that HEC takes when it comes to academics. But what was interesting is that it also kind of taps into the other transition I had, which was sort of you go into, or at least I went into the MBA with a very specific plan. And then you're surrounded by all these people from different backgrounds and different experiences who are on different schedules than you. I remember, for luxury and retail, recruitment for internships doesn't start till March or April, and that's early. But then you get on campus and there are these people for investment banking or consulting who are just hitting the ground running. And it's sort of you, or at least I had to be okay, I had my goals, I had my plans, all this cool stuff is happening around me. Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And I think this is a really great lesson that actually is maybe in-baked into the MBA, is sort of how flexible can you be with your goals? How easily can you sort of decide what to pay attention to and not to pay attention to? And then how does that then inform your journey? And the thing that was really great about HEC was that, we go through two core learning phases where it's sort of really rigorous academics and really focused and really, sort of business basics and principles. And then there's an opportunity in actually what's called the, I actually forget the name of it. There's a term where you get to either do a fieldwork project, or you can do a certificate, or you can take electives. And for me, that elective phase was actually incredible because it meant that any of the stuff I'd sort of looked at or thought about during the core term and seen people doing in clubs or in student groups, I kind of was able to tap into. So I could take, an M&A class. I could take a luxury marketing class, which was much more close to my experience. Or I could take probably my favorite course, or two favorite courses of the entire experience, which was European business, which was looking at the entire governmental structure of the EU and sort of how lobbying and politics actually plays into business. And international finance, where we had a teacher where ostensibly the functional practice was FX, but he was really, really interested in macro trends and really thinking about sort of how, I'm so sorry about this weird light. I'm dodging my plant here. But how actually these sort of wider trends and cultural stuff would impact decisions you were making. And I think that just kind of goes back to this idea of there's a million things happening, especially in a very international environment like HEC, and you want to be able to tap in and to learn all those things. But one of the biggest lessons we have to learn as MBAs and people in business is what to ignore and what to not pay attention to. So for me, that was definitely a big transition.
I can go next, and I can totally relate to Stephanie, whatever I guess she was saying, because so one of my calls before I joined Tepper, so one of the senior told me that Tepper is more like a amusement park. You have so many rides to take, but you cannot complete all the rides into it. So you have to pick and choose. You have to strategize and see that from point A to point B you want to go to. And how does all these classes, all the experiences, all the clubs actually help you get there? So one of the important things which actually helped me was to understand that this is my point A to point B transition, and how can I talk to as many alumni as possible who has made the same transition so that I can learn from the experience. So So networking helped a lot for me. So that was very, initially networking becomes a little bit of challenge because obviously it's a little bit, sometimes it can be, actually it can be awkward as well. But as and when I was very honest with whatever I want to learn from the alum, that those conversations become really, really easy to have those conversations. So as and when I learned about more and more experience from the alum, it actually helped me shape my courses as well as electives. And yeah, Tepper so actually helped me out a lot in the transition process. So.
Anyone else like to chime in? If not, we've got plenty of other questions from viewers that we can go ahead and move on to. So I'll give it a going once, going twice, if anyone would like to share your thoughts who hasn't already. All right. We'll go ahead and move forward because we've got a couple of other really great questions that I want to make sure we have the opportunity to get to. And the next of them deals with the internship process. So I know a few of you have touched on the internship process and what that looks like for you so far. But we had a few student questions that dealt with, okay, well, what type of impact did that internship process and decision have for you, both on your current career and the rest of your MBA experience? So whoever would like to jump in and speak to that a bit.
I can take that one. So it had a huge impact on my current career. It pretty much defined it. I joined PepsiCo in their strategic finance rotational program. Rotational programs in general are very attractive for people who don't know what they actually want to do. It gives you a little time to figure it out. And I was placed in the mergers and acquisitions group because Pepsi at the time wanted to stretch everybody's boundaries. I thought I was going to go into something like FP&A, like something to do with my engineering background. No, they were like, no, you don't even know what the word acquisition means. You get to go into this group. And it turned out I loved it. It was an amazing experience. Everybody I was working with was extremely intelligent, driven, highly qualified. I think I was the only MBA in the group as well, or maybe there was another one. And I enjoyed it so much that I accepted the early offer to do full time. And I think that was really helpful because it meant for the second year, there was a lot less pressure. It meant that I could focus on taking electives that were one in my interests. So I took some random ones like about like real estate in like medieval times. I know that was a course that was offered, but also ones that I knew would help me round out areas that I didn't really actually have the skills in, that I'd need for my job, but also for other jobs. So like a lot of negotiations courses, some marketing stuff, things like that, things that you wouldn't generally experience in the role that I'd had or the roles that I had been in before. And I totally credit that role with every single other role I've had since. So the fintech startup was really interested in somebody who was able to run their own process and work autonomously because they were a team of 50 people trying to triple revenue in 6 months. And then Facebook specifically told me, because of my deal experience, that's why they were interested in, they reached out to me. I actually didn't recruit with them. They were like, hey, you have fintech experience, you have deal experience, we would like to offer you this role. And it was probably all the luck I'll ever have in my life. And so I'd say be really thoughtful and careful when picking your interviews. Something that Stephanie said, which is like, you have to really figure out what to do and like how flexible your plan is. You have to be thoughtful. You're paying a lot of money for this experience. Make it count because the internship does turn into something much bigger than it should be.
To kind of continue with this current question, but to add on to it, since I know we have so many career changers in the panel, alongside speaking to your experience with the internship process, if you could
Looks like the
close again.
and did I lose you guys again?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
You're back though, you're back.
It looks like I'm off hotspot and back onto real world internet, so we should be in good shape for the remainder of this session. My apologies. I know you have the question on screen, so I'm not sure how much of that you caught. Those of you speaking to your internship experiences, if you could also touch on how that transition impacted the internship experience for you and what challenges you may have encountered along the way.
I really resonate with this. And I think a theme that actually is important when you go into the MBA program is to think a lot more about transferable skills and experiences. And so for me, my internship firstly changed, similar to Ria, it really defined the rest of what I was able to do. It defined sort of the choices I made for the academic program. So I got an internship at Net-a-Porter in London working on, it was technically strategic planning and implementation, but it was essentially a customer experience project. And so because I ended up doing a strategy internship, that led me to the choice to pursue finance as my sort of specialized phase study, which for me was awful. Again, I have an arts degree, so it was horrific. But at the same time, to my point that I'm going to try and make, perhaps not as articulately as I would have hoped, it's what you take out of it. So I went in and, on the outside, it was like, okay, this is luxury, this is fashion, this is strategy, this is all the stuff that I have in my wheelhouse. But really what it ended up showing me was I worked on this team that was formed with cross-functional leaders across the organization. So it was data strategy, customer insight, private client, CRM, and it ended up actually propelling me into the career that I have now. So I'm in the rotation program for WPP, which is all about marketing, advertising, and media. And for me, coming from a luxury background, I sort of had thought about, customer experiences. I worked in a small company. I was top to bottom. Of course, this is how you think about it. But actually, the questions ended up being hyper relevant to what marketing is trying to address and deal with today. And so the two things I actually got out of it, as opposed to just, a really great luxury name on my CV for postgrad recruitment, was this opportunity to have strategy and add finance to my toolbox, because I managed to craft both together. And instead of just it being a luxury sort of strategy experience, it really introduced me to the world of what digital marketing and e-commerce was at a time when it was accelerating super rapidly. And all of those experiences and skills were things that not just did I put on my CV as the name and that I had an internship, but for the WPP program, I had a full day of interviews with 6 different panelists, and all of my experiences ended up being sort of I did this, but it relates to this. And I think particularly if you're coming from what, you might not think of as a regular background for the role you want to go into, at HEC, for example, we had tons of MBAs who came from product marketing, engineering, and they went into internships, say with Amazon or with Google, and actually flipped and then did something totally different. And so I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I would say, both about internships. You do have to be thoughtful and try and recruit into the spaces you want to be in, but also sort of, don't think of your background as sort of it's not applicable because it doesn't say the word or it's not in the realm, And I think that is something that you really end up doing as an exercise when you're going through your CV, when you're doing your interviews, when you're thinking about where to recruit, is how does what I have experienced and what I'm able to think about and do actually transfer to another industry, to another team, or to another line of business? And I can't emphasize enough, the sooner you start trying to break out of the A equals A or 1 + 1 = 2 and sort of what comes afterwards, that is that for me was a huge unlock. And I do think it's applicable for lots of students and lots of industries and areas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a terrific piece of advice. I think, one of the things that I was looking for in my internship that I found at Citi was the possibilities outside of the specific internship or role that I was applying for. So, not only what can this, rotational program offer me, but what other opportunities outside, but within the same firm, are available once I get all of these skills. And, I chose Citi because, of course, it's a, enormous financial institution. It's global. And the HR program specifically offered a tremendous amount of diversity. And I got it. I mean, during my internship, I saw sort of the investment banking side, working as an HR advisor. My first role, my first year, I was in learning and development, and I got to see sort of the risk side, so a global function. And then in my third rotation, I worked in compensation for the consumer bank. So I literally saw all 3 aspects of the bank in really close proximity, and was exposed to senior leaders in every one of the franchises, which was really tremendous. But one of the biggest draws of Citi is, you know, the hardest thing is sort of getting in, and then once you're in, the world is your oyster, and that's exactly what I found. I post my 2 years, you know, in the HR rotational program, I moved out to San Francisco and got a job as a business manager for the tech banking group, and I'm taking all of my learnings, my comp background, my learning and development, program management background, and I'm applying it now to something that's, you know, a totally different group and a different region. So I think, you know, when you are looking at those internships, you know, focus obviously on your interest in that particular job, but also think about all the possibilities at that firm, and can you see yourself long term, or you know, what else is out there for you?
I can go next. Sort of the major challenge I faced at Intuit, where I was special product manager intern there, that I mean, delegation. So one of the things which I faced was, for example, let's say as part of the product development, I know what the problem is. I can actually go and fix it, but suddenly I feel like I should not do that, because my job is not to develop and code. My job is to now manage the whole product, right? So building that information kind of, instead of depth, is more like a broader sense of it. So I can manage my stakeholder, I can manage communication, I can manage executive communication, and trying to make sure that the customers get the best product possible. So that is a transition phase, which actually helped me in my internship to understand, okay, what are the things, what are the different skill set I need to develop and augment my actually existing skill set to be actually successful at my own job. So because of that, that was a nice testing water, so that I can feel that how product management actually looks like, and how can I actually get better at it. So internship obviously is a 3-month long, is a very high intensity internship. So that was a great experience as well.
Carmen, would you like to chime in as well on this one?
Although my point of view is slightly different. I was lucky enough that I studied my MBA having a full tuition and living expenses scholarship. So for me, the approach to the internship was slightly different. Obviously, transferable skills, related experience was important, but rather than doing an internship at a regular corporation, I chose a nonprofit. And being a career switcher, you might think that I should have focused my internship in doing something more related to real estate, even though it was somehow related, because this nonprofit was developing a new concept of schools to be shipped to third world countries to help them with development. But it wasn't pure real estate investments, which is what I do now. But it was a very enriching experience, because, well, obviously I got an internship, and that was my way to give back a little bit and try to help others. Second, I got tons of transferable skills. I did a lot of work. I contributed a lot, and obviously I was able to use that, tap on it later down the road, and the second year when I was looking for a full-time position. But also I think we tend to focus on that internship, and many people think that internship is, you get it or it is the end of the world. And the message that I want to give is, it's not the end of the world. You are going to have, if you don't get your dream internship, it's going to be fine. If you go to good schools like the ones we have here today, you will end up in something with a very good full-time job, which is the goal. The goal is not the internship, the goal is the full-time job. So what you need to think is, I have 2 years to get this set of skills, this set of experiences, and there's a number of ways that I can do that. I can do that by running clubs, by creating podcasts, by doing international consulting experiences, and the internship. And the internship is just one more.
Wonderful. Looks like we have time for just about one more question, and you guys have already done a wonderful job of addressing several components of this question, just in speaking to your experiences, transitioning careers, or expecting the unexpected, but I'd love to hear a little bit as kind of a closing question from each of you on just generally speaking, any advice that you'd have based on your experiences for current applicants.
Well, I'm going to start. This is an advice that I have given to many candidates, because when I was at TAG, I was also involved in the admissions, with the admissions office. And I would always say, there is a school for everyone, but not everyone has to go to the same school. TAG was the best place on earth for me. You tell me go back to TAG and I'm already in the airport. I will not hesitate a second. For me, I've talked before about the strength of TAG's alumni network. 2 of the 3 jobs that I have had since I graduated have been either facilitated or directly provided by TAG alumni. They supported me from day one, even before I got into TAG, all the way up to today. And the strength of the relationships that I've developed there on those 2 years, on that very intense experience, is 10 years. My best friends are all over the world and are my TAG friends. So for me, it was good network, good academics, and that community, those relationships you are going to have for the rest of your life. So that's a summary of what TAG has to offer. And again, I encourage people to visit, because from outside, everyone do very good marketing and things sounds very good, but you need to see yourself in the school. You need to go there to see the dynamics of the school, to see how classes are, how the groups are organized, how the extracurricular activities, and obviously recruiting is #1 activity, are organized and work, because that's how you're going to know whether the school is the place for you or not.
I think something that, Carmen, that you said earlier really resonates with me in terms of advice for applicants, which is like, the internship is not the thing. And if you look at sort of the 2 years, up to 2 years experience that you might have in the MBA, like it's really important to think of all of it as an additive process, and that 2 years, there's a set of experiences that will make you different at the end. And that advice is equally as applicable to when you're thinking about yourself and your application. That it's not you clearing hurdles with a title or a number of years or whatever, but really digging into your own experiences and how that makes you the candidate that you are, how that makes the potential that you have something special for the school. And I do think that we can sometimes get caught up in this idea of like clearing the hurdle or making the name or getting the one thing. And so as you go through this application process, 1, apply that thinking to yourself, and then 2, apply it to the schools you look at. And to the point of there's a school for everyone, look at the set of schools you're thinking about, and then really dig into like what are the values outside of the name that brings to me. Are there clubs there that are going to matter to me? Are there regional like interests? Like for example at HEC, like if you're interested in tech, like Paris-Saclay is one of the greatest sort of like research and technology sort of clusters in the world. And then we have Station F, and like those opportunities are around the schools or connected to the schools. Or even something as simple as like, there's a couple of people who have mentioned that they're consultants and they've got all this experience. It's sort of like, is that MBA experience actually a time for you to kind of like have some lived life experiences? Like at HEC, we have students who come and the biggest activity that they participate in is actually travel. And they go to different countries in Europe and they gain these new experiences and they meet new people, and they take all of that into sort of the way they see and view the world. So I would really just say think of the whole experience as additive, and your previous experience as an additive, something that's not just additive, but like a melting pot, or, that there's just all these different flavors that make up the experience and also you as a candidate. So really like try and break out of this, like I have to have X, Y, and Z on the resume or on the list or in my answer before I qualify for anything else. Kind of think bigger and more holistically.
One piece of advice I like to give, and it's really simple, is go to class. And I know that sounds so stupid because, you're paying tons of money for school, but I just want to emphasize there is something so special about adult learning, about being in a place in your life where you are investing in your own education. at a time that's really usually critical in your career. You're taking time off, whether you're doing a part-time program or a full-time program, and you get to sit and listen to some of the smartest people you will ever meet in your entire life and take notes, as Stephanie said, either by hand or by computer. I was also very confused to start. But it is such a fantastic opportunity to learn as a fully fledged adult and to take those learnings out into the real world. So go to class. That is my advice.
Mine is, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So wherever you are in the application process, it sucks if you're working full time. There were months I was literally just falling asleep on my laptop because it would be full day of work, come home, do essays, interview prep. What do I need to do? Why do I want to go to this school? Oh, wait, did I confuse it? So that was tough. And then when I got there, I think somebody else mentioned this it was Sherry about networking. That's a full-time job as well. Like, you go to class during the day and it doesn't stop. Like, when you do social activities after, especially in your first year, because all the clubs and whatever else, that's all like work and investment as well. And it gets very exhausting. So 1, don't forget why you started. And 2, it's a marathon. So pace yourself.
Okay, so one piece of advice which I actually followed was to talk to alums as much as possible, because they have been there, they've done that, and based on the discussion, you can actually shape out the application. You can shape out like which school to attend or which school to apply in the first round, second round. In fact, at Tepper, I spoke to 10 people. 10 alum before I decided, okay, this is the school which I want to apply for. So definitely network and be honest about it. I mean, whatever the challenge, for example, I don't understand if I have to go from point A to point B. Now we can share with the alums, and alums can say, okay, I have the same experience. I mean, these are the advices which I have, and actually shape us in having a plan before actually we attend the MBA. Because MBA first 6 months, no time. Not at all, no time at all. So you have literally you're drinking from a fire hose. So it's like too many things going on there. So.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for being here with us to share your thoughts, your experiences, and your advice to future MBA students. That's about all the time we have, but thank you again for joining us. Thank you for those of you tuning in live, and we hope to see you in another one of our MBA Spotlight sessions soon.